Okay, if you're watching this YouTube video, you've probably got something like this in your pool where you've got a head that's maybe standing up even though the pump is off, and you can see the algae pattern around the head. There's a clear patch in front of it to the right on this video, and around it it's got a lot of algae buildup, so it's clearly not rotating. The head is not rotating. So what we're going to do on this video is get this head out using a commercially available in-floor pop-up head remover, and you can find those in various sites. And once I get this head out, we'll take a look at it and I'll show you how to take it apart, clean it up, and hopefully see that it's reusable. Okay, so that'll be our next step. I'll get this thing out and then we'll go take it to the shop. Okay, here's the pool head that we took out of the pool, and just to show you what I used, this is the pool pop-up tool. If you Google that, you'll find a number of suppliers that have them. The only thing that's important about these is make sure that you've got the right number of pins to match the number of slots you got in the top of your pop-up. So this tool just goes on there, then you can turn it, pop it out, and you got it here. So if we just look at this thing quickly, we can see there's quite a bit of mineral buildup on it. And because this has to go up and down a lot, if that mineral buildup interferes with any of the motion, then the head won't return to its position, so it'll end up sticking up like that. And if it can't turn when it comes back down, or it goes back down to exactly the same spot, then obviously it's not turning again. So what we want to do is see if we can rehab this head. I really can't complain about this head because it's 20 years old. It's been in the pool going up and down who knows how many times over that 20 years. So it may just be worn out. But the question is, if I can clean it up, will it start operating somewhat smoothly, or is it just flat worn out after 20 years and needs to be replaced? Okay, so to get at the inside of it, you have to recognize that we've got 4 pins. There's a pin here that goes through this shaft. There are pins diametrically opposite on each side of the body. These 2 pins are indexing pins, and you don't have to worry about them. In fact, you don't do anything at all with them. And the 4th pin is hiding here. And that's actually the critical pin. Now, they have conveniently put that pin right across from the spout on the head, but you can't get at it because this rod goes up and gets in the way. So the first step is to get that rod out of the way so we can get at that pin. Okay, so let's do that. It's actually pretty easy. All we got to do is get the spring down out of the way, and we can just use a screwdriver here, and then pull the pin out. Alright, so we notice that at the end of the shaft we've got 1 stainless steel washer, and that's followed by the spring, And that's followed what looks like a nylon washer, but we'll see in a minute that it's a little more complicated than that. In fact, it's a little tough to get off. And then finally we've got 2 more stainless steel washers, and then there's this guide ring that goes up in the body. It keeps the whole thing in alignment. Okay, so at this stage we're ready to get that rod out of there. And fortunately it's just a press fit, so if you go like that, the rod pops out. Okay, and now you got access to the back side of that pin through the spout. Okay, so let's see how we get that pin out of there. We'll swing the camera over here. And what I've got, if I get it in position, just a piece of scrap lumber that's got a kerf in it to give me some driving space for this pin. So I'm going to set it there with the pin down and get the punch. It's a very small punch because I don't want to be tearing up the plastic. I want to be steel on steel here. And give it a tap. Alright, got it started. Get it back in there. Line it up again. And there, got it out. Not out, but at least it's given me enough that I can get a hold of. Okay. So back here. Now you can see the pin sticking out, so I'm just going to grab a hold of it with some pliers and pull it. There we go. So now the 2 halves of the ratchet mechanism that swings the head around should be free. Of course, they got 20 years of mineral buildup on them, so we'll see how easy it is to pull them apart. Not even too bad. Okay, so there are that's the body, and then the top of the ratchet, the bottom of the ratchet. Let me just point out now so I don't forget. To put these back together, you've obviously got to get this hole, where is it, to line up with that hole. Well, they make that very easy for you because they put a little rail right here molded into the plastic, and that rail's got to slide inside that slot when it goes back together, and they push that all the way in, push it all the way in, and those holes will line up for your pin. Okay, at this stage, something we need to think about is where are the friction bearing surfaces on this head. So this bottom piece, it's got lots of slop in there. So I don't think there's ever going to be much friction between the bottom half of the ratchet and the inside of the body. The top, a little bit of a different problem. So it's still got quite a bit of slop here, but keep in mind how this thing works with your water flow. The water comes up through the bottom of this thing, hits the top which tends to push it up, and then has to make a 90-degree turn to come out of the nozzle. Well, that's going to generate forces that are driving this back against the back of the body. So that, even though there is this slop here, that's going to create a bearing surface. And of course this thing goes around as it works its way along. So the entire inside of this has bearing on these fins here. Now I think they've used those fins to try to cut down on the amount of contact surface, but there still is going to be contact. And in fact, you can see that that's kind of kept the inside of this clear of the mineral buildup. But we want to, you can feel it's rough. So we're going to need to clean that up. So how do you clean this mess up? It's a mineral deposit, so probably acid in some form is going to work. You got a lot of muriatic acid if you've got a pool, so you could use that. I didn't want to be that aggressive because I wasn't sure what I was dealing with here in terms of this deposit. But at any rate, what we want to do, I decided to use, instead of the pool acid, I'm just using white vinegar, not wine vinegar. I wouldn't want to use that. Just white vinegar, and I've actually diluted it by half. So nothing should be too awful on this. So I'm just going to drop these in here. And we'll get this in here. Oh, talking about bearing surfaces, I never mentioned this. That's where the fact that this is not a round washer, it's actually squared off. And what has to happen is this slides up and down on here. So if there's any buildup along this, it's really going to cause problems. So we're going to clean that up, and then finally our rod. So put the lid on that and just let it sit there overnight. So we'll come back and take a look at it, give it a little bit of lubrication when we put it back together, and see if it was worth all the effort. No guarantees yet. Alrighty. Okay, here's our parts after they've come out of the vinegar bath, and I've also done some scrubbing on these a little bit. Again, all we're interested in is the bearing surfaces. So I've got the inside of this pretty well cleaned up. And after I cleaned it up and let it dry a bit, I gave everything a squirt of some plastic safe silicone spray to give it as much of a chance of working as I could. One thing that I forgot to mention in terms of bearing surfaces is that the index pin rides on the sloping face of the ratchet, both the upper and the lower half of the ratchet. I cleaned that up. I gave that special attention. I don't know if you noticed, but when I was taking it apart, one of the things that was really kind of getting tight was this little ring on the post, and that's now obviously working a lot better. So these are all good omens for hopefully this thing coming back and actually working when it goes back in the pool. But as I said, it's been in the pool for 20 years. It may be just worn out. We'll see when we put it back in. Okay, so the reassembly is just the reverse. One of the things I noticed yesterday after I looked at the video was I didn't give you a good view. I talked about it, but it wasn't in the camera range. I didn't give you a good view of what you need to match up when you put the upper and lower halves of the ratchet mechanism together. So the key here is you've got a slot in the lower half and you've got a ridge in the inside of the upper half. And as long as you get that into this, then everything will go back together. So that just has to go in there, and then it can slide down, and that'll make sure that the hole on the upper half matches this back out of here, matches the hole on the lower half when you drive the pin back through there. Those obviously got to match up. Okay, so to do this, we need to get this guy back in there. We got to find that ridge, which is right there. Get the groove to match up with it, and put those guys back together. So now I want to get my pin back in here, and on this pin at least, one end is kind of rounded and the other's kind of squared off, so I want to get the rounded down into there. Okay, and now I'm going to go off camera just a second on my block of wood and just drive that pin down, just light taps, until the pin is flush. As long as it's flush, it'll be okay inside. You can see it sticks through a little bit, but all we really care about is that it clears our rod that comes back through. Okay, and our rod is back in place. Next thing is our guide ring. The guide ring, you notice, has a ridge. You want that ridge to ride inside the body. And we need 2 of our stainless steel washers on there, followed by our little nylon guide ring, followed by the spring, followed by the stainless steel washer, and then our pin. That started. And just get it back to centered. It's not real critical here, as long as we catch our spring. Okay, well, there's our head back together. We can try what we did before. Okay, number one, I can tell you just by feel it's moving a lot better, and you can see that it seems to be rotating much better than it was before. So at this stage, keep your fingers crossed. We put it back in the pool and hopefully it starts to work. So what if it doesn't? Okay, and what if you don't want to go through all of that process that we just went through? Okay, so here is a new one of those from A&A Manufacturing, where all this came from, and this is this style right here is in A&A's nomenclature an S2. Okay, so here's a brand new S2. It's obviously a lot cleaner, and it certainly works smoothly. So maybe you want to use that. they cost anywhere from 40 bucks up to like 70 bucks, just depending on what you look for, how much time you're willing to spend looking around for them on the internet. And different places have them on sale. Let me point out, however, that A&A has come up with a G2 model. So, let me show you what this guy looks like. The G, I think, stands for gamma. The old S2 used to be called a Magnus suite, but they've changed their nomenclature. Okay, these fit into the same hole in the bottom of your pool. The main thing that determines that is this distance right here and these lugs on the side. The lugs are in the same positions, the height's the same. The big difference that I can see between the S2 and the G2 is, look at the meaty lifting mechanism on this thing. That's a real improvement. It's also extremely easy to take these guys apart because all you do is, another big difference I should point out is that the nozzle is a fixed size on the S2. On the G2, you can actually adjust the size of the nozzle. You can pick the size of the nozzle with a little rotation here that takes this apart. This now slides out and you can select the nozzle size that you want. This intermediate size right here is the one that I use. And look how easy it is to get this guy apart. Okay, so at any rate, you've got some choices here. I have these guys in reserve. Get this guy back in here. Well, I'll do that a little later. I have these guys in reserve in case our rehab on this one doesn't work and this one goes in the trash. Okay, so that's what I know about these guys. I hope that helps anybody out there that wants to try to rehab an old one. If it doesn't work, well, 40 bucks. You can get one of these guys. Okay, that's it.